institute policies is through a ballot measure.
I'm Meghna Chakrabarty. That's on the next On Point.
On Point comes your way weekday evenings at 7 on Radio IQ.
Radio IQ is broadcasting in digital on WVTF Roanoke.
The November 7th meeting of Roanoke City Council is hereby called to order, and I will ask our clerk, Ms. Susan McCord, to please call the roll.
Ms. Price?
Here.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones?
Here.
Vice Mayor White Boyd?
Here.
Mr. Bestfitch?
Here.
Mr. Cobb?
Here.
Ms. Moon is absent, and Mayor Lee.
Here, and a quorum is present, and Ms. Moon Reynolds will not be with us today. Council meetings will be televised live and replayed on RVTV Channel 3 on Thursdays at 7 o'clock p.m. and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. and video streamed through Facebook Live at facebook.com/RoanokeVA. Council meetings are offered with closed captioning for the deaf or hard of hearing. All right, the items for action this morning. There's a communication from the mayor's office requesting that council convene in a closed meeting to discuss vacancies on certain authorities, boards, commissions, and committees appointed by council, pursuant to Section 2.2-3711 Code of Virginia as amended. And a list of the current vacancies was included with the agenda for this meeting. I need a motion for that.
So moved. Second.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones?
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd?
Aye.
Mr. Bestfitch?
Aye.
Mr. Cobb?
Aye.
And Mayor Lee.
Aye, and the motion passes. There's a communication from Vice Mayor Patricia White Boyd, Chair of the City Council Personnel Committee, requesting that council convene in a closed meeting to discuss a personnel matter, being the annual performance evaluation of a core council-appointed officer, pursuant to Section 2.2-3711 Code of Virginia as amended. I need a motion.
So moved. Second.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones? Vice Mayor White Boyd?
Aye.
Mr. Bestfitch?
Aye.
Mr. Cobb?
Aye.
Mayor Lee.
Aye, and the motion passes. Thank you. There's a communication from the city attorney requesting a closed meeting with legal counsel pertaining to actual litigation where such consultation and briefing in an open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigation posture of the public body, pursuant to Section 2.2-3711 Code of Virginia as amended. I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones?
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd?
Aye.
Mr. Bestfitch?
Aye.
Mr. Cobb?
Aye.
And Mayor Lee.
Aye, and the motion passes. Thank you. There is a communication from the city manager requesting a closed meeting to discuss a prospective business or industry or the expansion of an existing business or industry in the southeastern area of the city of Roanoke, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body pursuant to sections 2.2-3711, Code of Virginia as amended. We need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones? Vice Mayor White Boyd?
Aye.
Mr. Bestfitch?
Aye.
Mr. Cobb?
Aye.
Mayor Lee?
Aye, and the motion passes. Thank you all. All right, our next item is to discuss any items on the 2 p.m. council docket requiring discussions, clarifications, and/or additions or deletions to the agenda. Or are there any topics by the mayor and members of council? All right, hearing none, we'll go right into our briefings. And I will call on our city attorney, Laura. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We will have David Gwynn from the Fire Department will be making the briefing this morning.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thank you for having me this morning. I appreciate the introduction, Ms. Carini. Before you today is an agenda report from the City Attorney's Office proposing an amendment to the Roanoke City Code of Ordinances that allows the City of Roanoke to enforce a smoke alarm requirement in residential dwelling properties. As you can see there on the council briefing. This, and I guess it's appropriate that Laura and the folks from Advantis are on this morning as well, because this effort has had a pretty complex history in that this has been something that the legislative committees worked on for a while to get the enabling legislation from the General Assembly to allow us to do this, and there was an opinion from the State Attorney General saying that we weren't allowed to do it, and then the General Assembly went back and made some changes, and then we got with the City Attorney's Office last month, and there was some communication from Ms. Bateman, and we've determined that we can move forward without any additional action from Richmond to achieve this goal. So just a little bit of background. 3 out of 5 home fires in 2021 occurred in properties with no smoke alarms present or where those smoke alarms failed to operate. The death rate per 1,000 home structure fires is 55% lower in homes with working smoke alarms compared to those without. So the idea that smoke alarms mitigate against death due to fire, that's without a doubt. The City of Roanoke has a kind of a different risk threshold on this compared to many of our surrounding localities, simply because the huge majority of our housing stock was built before 1976 and has no explicit requirement to have smoke alarms in place. So this ordinance, if adopted, would essentially allow us to enforce the requirement for landlords to install smoke alarms in their rental properties and require hotels, motels, overnight dwelling units like that to have smoke alarms in their rooms. And I know that oftentimes it can be shocking in today's day and age to understand that there are buildings and places where people sleep without smoke alarms, but unfortunately we do see this quite often here in the city, and we often see a larger percentage of, or a larger incidence of death and serious injury in homes where smoke alarms are not present. We as the Fire EMS Department, October is Fire Prevention Month, and here at the next meeting, I think the second meeting in November, you'll get to see some of the work of our youngest citizens in the Fire Prevention Art Contest, and a great partnership that we do with Roanoke City Public Schools. And also this year, we actually made an effort to really hit smoke alarms hard. And in a month, we were able to install over 200 smoke alarms in the city of Roanoke. And we did that regardless of where people lived. We did it in apartments, we did it in rental properties, we did it in individually owned homes. But really, this ordinance will allow us to essentially hold landlords and property owners accountable for something that they're already required to do. So, when rental properties, apartments, things like that in Virginia, they're governed by the Landlord-Tenant Act. There is a requirement that they have smoke alarms that function in the building or in the home, but it's a civil issue at that point without adoption of this ordinance. We cannot do anything to enforce it. So this ordinance will allow us to go out and work with our colleagues in the Code Enforcement Division here in the city to make sure that particularly landlords, hotels, motels, they're living up to their side of the bargain and they're providing for fire safety for the folks that stay in their properties. One other person that I would like to acknowledge just real quick who has retired from the city of Roanoke, but he was very passionate about this topic for many years, is Dan Webb. If some of you may know Dan, he was in charge of code enforcement and he was the manager for that division. Before that, he was in planning, building, development as a building inspector. I think he had over 30 years of service, Chris? Almost 40 years of service, yeah. So Dan just retired, I think, 2 months ago. And this is one of the things that Dan was absolutely passionate about. And, you know, if we get to next council meeting, if you all move this forward, we'll see if we can have Dan here because he was such a big part of this. So I don't really have anything additional, but I'd be happy to answer any questions. Are we taking questions, Ms. Carini? Okay, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about what we're doing or our objective.
Thank you. Any questions from members of council?
I just have a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I visit a lot of homes in the city, a lot of apartment buildings, and the landlords are failing their tenants to even, when they move in, to even have a new battery. They move in and they hear this thing chirping all the time, and I think that's what it was meant to be. They don't know that they're supposed to change the battery because nobody told them
Right.
that it was battery operated.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's terrifying. I mean, it really is, because you'll never hear me say that smoke alarms are a prevention measure, because they're not. Smoke alarms can't stop a fire from occurring, but what smoke alarms do is they're a mitigation measure, right? So the fire at that point has started. So then the question then is, what is the impact of that fire going to be in terms of dollar loss, or more importantly, lives, right? So, you know, for folks that, you know, they don't know what smoke alarms do. We work very hard to educate people on, you know, if it shouldn't be beeping, but, you know, they don't know what to do. And, you know, it's not like we're going in and we're saying this is a new requirement for landlords, because again, civilly, this requirement exists, but we're just making sure that, you know, we're holding these folks accountable to make sure that we can make their properties a little bit more safe.
Thank you.
Sorry.
You still with the floor?
No, I said thank you. I'm sorry.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones' question reminded me of an experience I had a couple months ago when I was visiting a property that's privately owned apartment complex. And I was visiting with the young mother about a number of challenges she was having in the property, including they had smoke alarms, but I heard the smoke alarm beeping, and she said, and I said, do you need a battery? And she said, I can get a battery, but you know what they charge us here at the property just to replace a battery?
Wow.
And I said, no, $150.
Wow.
They charge us $150 to put in blinds, to put in a battery, whatever it is, they charge us. And these are low-income properties. So
Sure.
These are some of the challenges that even residents who, you know, want to do the right thing are facing, so.
Absolutely. And, you know, batteries, this is where it gets interesting, because, you know, oftentimes, well, not oftentimes, unless there's some other agreement in a lease, the default requirement for the maintenance of the smoke alarm, so the battery installation, is that, you know, the residents are responsible for that. But, you know, that can be a challenge. But to anybody that is in that position, I would say, you know, save the $150 and call us, you know, 540-853-2327, and we will come out. You know, a big red fire truck will come out, you know, or somebody from the fire marshal's office, or, you know, Chief Hoback, he's tall, we didn't even need a ladder to do it, we'll get him to come out and do it. And somebody from the fire department will come, and we'll get that taken care of, because that's a lot to ask, especially for somebody who's already in a low-income apartment like you mentioned. That's disappointing to hear.
All right. I got a question on sounds in my house. I got fire alarms, but there's a chirping, and I think I've heard that ever since I put in a generator in my house. One of those generators that if the power goes off, it comes back on. Now, I don't think that's my fire alarm. I hope it's not, because I'm thinking that it's that, but is there a distinguishable sound that you get there to make sure?
So the sound that smoke alarms make is set by standard, and they all kind of sound the same, but you know, that occasional chirping, I don't know, it depends on, especially with a generator, sometimes depending on the generator you have, the folks that come and install that may do other things. They may put a carbon monoxide alarm in or something like that, which also can chirp when it needs attention. But I think what we would probably best do is maybe get with you offline, and we'll see what we can do to help you address that.
But anytime a chirp
Yes.
comes, you need to check it out to make
Absolutely,
sure.
yes, sir. These things are designed that they only make noise when they need something. They either need help or they need to get you out of the house. So we can get with you offline about that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Are we to move on this morning?
Not today, Mayor. We will be bringing this at your next meeting on the 21st
Okay.
for your consideration.
If there are no further questions, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right. We're going to now move into our legislative meeting this morning, legislative committee meeting. And I'm going to call on our chairman, Mr. Joe Bestpitch, to take us through.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll let our staff get settled here for just a moment. As I think everyone knows, Mr. Spencer is giving video testimony for the Court of Appeals this morning, so he's not able to be with us, but he is certainly well represented with Laura Carini and David Collins, and I see Mr. Barber's just sneaking out the back door. I believe he's the one that worked on the code amendment for the fire alarms. Is that correct? So he was just here in case anybody had any questions, but I really appreciate all three of you joining us this morning. And with that, I will call the Legislative Committee meeting to order and ask Ms. Cook, please call the roll.
Mayor Lee,
Here?
Mr. Bestpitch,
Here.
Ms. White Boyd,
Here.
Mr. Cobb,
Here.
Ms. Price,
Here.
Ms. Moon Reynolds, Ms. Sanchez Jones,
Here.
Dr. Jamison, Mr. Kathy.
And a quorum is present. Dr. Jamison informed me that she was not able to be with us this morning due to a work commitment, but we do have Dr. Siebert, and I'm especially happy to recognize and welcome our Superintendent White to our meeting this morning. As you know, education is a very high priority for us as a council and as a city government, and so we appreciate the opportunity to work together with our school system to look at the issues that we may need some help from the General Assembly. So I hope that everyone had a chance to review the information that I sent out. This document has gotten to the size where I really didn't think it was prudent for us to continue to print off hard copies. So you have it in electronic format, I hope, on the email, and I appreciate, I guess especially the mayor and Ms. Sanchez Jones for letting me know that they did receive it when I sent the email. I think we really only have a couple of things to deal with this morning. First of all, as you just heard, we will be receiving a proposed code amendment to deal with the smoke alarms issue. So that means that under Section A on health and safety, we can eliminate item 1 because that will be taken care of. We thought we would need to have legislation for that, and it appears that we can handle that by a code amendment to our city code. So we will remove that one if there's no objection. And then also item 8 on page 11 of the, under B on public safety, excuse me, B is not, local government. item 8 under B, local government. This has to do with the thing we've been discussing for a few years now about being able to place liens for unpaid solid waste fees along with the other taxes and fees that are all billed on the same invoice. It appears that Mr. Spencer has found some information from the city of Hampton that they have found a way to do this without requiring legislation. So I think we're going to try that approach. Mr. Collins, were you the one that was involved with that one?
I was not.
You're not. Ms. Karina, do you have any other information on that? You can.
It was Mr. Barber who just stepped out, but as you said, we're working to see what Hampton is doing, and we're following up with them. We think we have a fix, yes.
Okay, so if we can fix that without adding that to our legislative agenda, that makes it that much simpler and more easy for all of us, I think. So we will go ahead and eliminate that one at this point as well. Okay, so that's number 1 and number 8. I did send an updated version of the draft with new information from Dr. Siebert on the K through 12 education funding, control for education, or excuse me, and control for inflation. Dr. Siebert, if you would come up, I'm trying to remember the date that you said this is actually going to go to the school board on.
The school board's legislative committee met on October 21st, and we anticipate adoption of the legislative positions for the board on the Monday 14th school board meeting.
Monday the 14th.
The only change here was consolidation of the 2 positions related to support staff cap, because our CFO, Kathleen Jackson, put together, we thought, a more meaningful chart to represent the local impact of that.
Right. So that on the support staff cap is now on pages 19 and 20 of the draft, and page 25 is the K through 12 education funding piece. I assume that there's probably a pretty good chance that the board will approve on the 14th as it's been drafted up to this point.
Mr. Cathy serves on that committee.
Yes, sir, I believe that's it.
I mean, you know, we always know that, and I really say that simply to say that it is always possible that on the 24th, we would make an amendment based on some request from the school board before final approval. Is that fair?
Superintendent White attended a conference just at the beginning of last week, and our feeling coming out of that was that we're very well prepared and have a good handle what the state has bubbling.
Great, thank you. Anything else from the schools at this point? Are we?
Thank you, sir. I do think the board we've done a lot of presentations to the entire board through the committee, and everybody's on board with this program.
So they're well aware.
Real pleased with it. Real pleased with Dr. Siebert's hard work, and real pleased with a very good and substantive bunch of legislation.
So thank you very much. So are there any other comments, questions, requests from members of the legislative committee?
May I ask to leave the superintendent to speak?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Certainly. Please.
She's not technically a member. She knows a little something.
Thank you, and good morning. Good morning, Council. And I just wanted to say thank you again for your commitment to public education. Thank you for your partnership and collaboration. We do have a new process in place, as you can see, and with this collaborative effort, we're able to really champion those things that will have a significant impact on our school system that we believe will benefit us in the long run. I did attend the VAST conference last week. Dr. Siebert and I both did, and we believe that there won't be any substantive changes from that conference, and then I know that the school board will also be meeting with the VSBA coming up soon. But again, we believe that the school board is in line to really support the efforts that you see before you. So again, just wanted to take a moment just to thank you for your partnership and your collaboration.
Thank you.
So you're seeing other boards and superintendents around this Commonwealth that are in support of these same issues.
The measures seem to be right in line with other school systems as well.
Yeah, I think that's very important, that when they start hearing from people all over Virginia instead of just hearing from Roanoke.
Yes, sir.
Not that they don't think we're important, but sometimes they think more voices are more effective.
Well, and I can say, I mean, I do serve as the chair of the Legislative Committee for Region 6.
Oh, great.
And so we did collaborate as a region, and we got together on our key principles and submitted those to VAS overall, and we can see that those principles are reflected in VAS's overall position. So
Very well.
we're really pleased with the progress that we
Great,
see thus far.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks
and
again.
thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
I know you came into this position at a very difficult time that I don't think any of us anticipated, and I think that a little bit off of the legislative agenda, but I just want to say publicly that I think it's very unfair, some of the criticism that's been leveled, not just against our Roanoke City Public Schools, but school systems around the country, to say that student performance has declined. That should be no surprise to any of us. We know that we have some catch-up work to do, and we know, at least in the city of Roanoke, that our school board, our superintendent, and all our teachers and staff are working very hard to help the children catch up again. But the other piece of that I also want to emphasize is that we have no idea how many lives were saved because students and teachers did not acquire COVID during the worst of the pandemic. We have no idea. Unfortunately, none of us ever gets any credit for the things that we prevent, because we can't count those numbers. We can't quantify that. But I think that some of the criticism is very ill-advised at this point, to think that it would have been better to fill our classrooms, fill our school spaces with students and teachers who had no opportunity at that point to be immunized against a terrible pandemic that took a million lives. And a lot of our teachers and students are with us today because we kept them safe. We kept them safe, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilman. I can say that I'm really encouraged by what I see today and what I see in our classrooms today. I'm so grateful for our teachers and our administrators. I'm grateful for all of you. Thank you for seeing public education as not as an expense, but as an investment. And we appreciate you, and we appreciate this city and all of the officials and our school board members. You know, as you know, in Roanoke City Public Schools, our motto is that we are one. We can't do this alone. And so when you visit a classroom, when you see the work getting done in the classrooms, when you see the investment of our parents pulling together as well, we're going well, we are focused on results, and we're going to see those results because we're doing the work. We're progress monitoring. We have curriculum in place. We've invested in professional learning. We're in a people business. We're not in a robotic business. We're in a people business. So we need people for our people. And so 85% of the budget is focused on people who can actually get this work done for our children.
Right.
And our children are working hard. So we're proud of that effort, and we believe that we will see those results as a result of that effort.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It is for our children, for our families, and for our entire community to have the best education system that we can possibly provide for our. Mr. Cobb, I think maybe you had a comment?
Yes, Mr. Bestpitch. Item number 2 under health and safety, and I apologize if this was in a previous draft. I didn't see. I'm curious about the inclusion of this regarding the schedule of civil penalties. I don't recall seeing this before, so I apologize if it has been in the draft before. I was curious about the background on this and if this was for
Civil
residential
penalties,
properties.
Item F?
No, item number 2 under health and safety.
Yeah, but sub-item F under that, under 15.2-2826.
I'm not seeing sub-item F.
Where are you seeing civil penalties?
Here.
Oh.
Am I
Yeah, that's an old,
Is this an old draft?
well, that's an old draft.
Well, this is what I downloaded from the email, so. Yeah.
Hold on.
And like I said, I apologize if this was an old draft.
Okay, I'm sorry, no, I'm sorry, that is an addition. I'm looking at an old draft that I printed out here, but I didn't want to print it, so I got it here on the screens. And what's the question?
I just had not seen this before, so I was curious what the background was for it and what the intention is.
Yeah, the intention is to simply to, as with many other things, to simply say there is a civil penalty that doesn't require any criminal charge or anything like that, but to enforce the requirement for meeting the code. There's similar language here for other aspects of the code, but it doesn't apply to the fire prevention code. In other words, the building code, this is basically just conforming the fire prevention code to the rest of the building code. Similar civil penalties that can be assessed for violations of the building code. And I think, as we sort of alluded to, in some ways, the fire prevention code can be one of the most important aspects of keeping buildings safe and in good repair. So it really is, as you can see there, everything that's in the black typeface is what's already in the Code of Virginia, and this is simply adding
Civil penalties.
yeah, civil penalties, which is the same as we don't have the Virginia Maintenance Code here as part of this section, but we can look that up and provide that if that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you.
All right? Apologize.
No, it's all right.
Yeah, if I were to add anything to that, it really is, as Mr. Vespich has indicated, it would allow the full spectrum of available penalty to be available, so that it carries, in some instances, as is already approved, criminal charges, in other cases civil charges. So this just enables that full spectrum, and ultimately would allow us to take different avenues in enforcement than we might otherwise be able to do under those codes.
We're good?
Yeah, I was just curious if there were particular things that we were experiencing in limitations that as to why this was brought forth, or?
Yeah, that's a question I would have to ask the fire marshal's office to see. I don't recall anything specific, but I think they probably had some things in mind when they put it in place.
It'd be helpful
Sure.
for me to know that.
All right, is that it? Vice Mayor Whiteboard, you look like you just...
Well, no, I'm trying to figure out something. I have a question, so whenever you're done, I just have a question here at the end when you're done.
Okay, not about changing anything in the draft. Okay, all right. If that's satisfactory with everyone, we'll ask, I see Ms. Bateman is with us, and Ron Jordan and Kathy Bircher are hiding without their video cameras on, but any comments that you might have that you want to share with us at this point would be very much appreciated.
Well, I'm happy to start out and say how much we all have enjoyed working with the Roanoke team, especially sort of digging into a lot of these issues and finding out where the city may already have some leeway to do some of the things that need to get done. And so it was just a pleasure to work with everybody and all the different departments. To Councilman Cobb's question about item number 2 on the civil penalty item, we did, I had extensive conversations with the deputy fire chief about that, and they talked to their statewide counterparts about the issue. And I think that's going to be, supported sort of far and wide. I think a lot of local governments are hoping to have civil penalties for things and sort of bring it back locally. So that was, I think, a very nice addition to the program. other than that, I think it looks good. Ron, Kathy, do you have anything?
Kath?
Again, I'll just echo Laura's sentiment about working with you all. I joined Advantis in January of last year, so really became a background worker on much of your program, and look forward to working with you this year through the development process, but also working closely with Roanoke City kind of through all of the legislative priorities that you've put in place here to move your agenda forward. And I look forward to continuing to work with you.
Ron?
And I'll wrap up. And if I can, I'll be a little bit informal if you'll permit me, Mr. Chairman. Bill, and I've known Bill, and some of you know I've known Bill and Sherman for a long time, longer than any of us care to admit. It shows how old but all three of us are. But Bill, I know this is your last, that you're sailing off into the sunset, and this is your last time doing this, and I want to thank you for how great it's been to work with you over the last few years as chairman of in your role as chairman of the legislative committee. And your leadership on this is really, really going to be missed. And I just want to say thank you on behalf of the three of us for that, for the pleasure of doing this.
Well, I appreciate that very much, Ron. I want to make sure you know that counting today all the way through December 31, there are still 55 days that you can call me or email me at any time if there's anything else that I can do. After midnight on December 31st, we'll have to get you a new phone number to call. But it has been a pleasure to work with Advantis as well. Let me say that I feel like that our partnership with your team has so far exceeded our expectations. It's been such a pleasant surprise, I guess I have to say, to find out how helpful and how diligently you have worked with us and helped us to understand different issues. And so I think that going forward, whoever's sitting up here should be very well positioned to continue to have a great advocate working on our behalf whenever the General Assembly is in session, and actually even when they're not, because there are a lot of things that happen between the general session. So thank you for all your work and your support, your help with all of this. Mr. Mayor, I will make these changes that we just discussed, take these two items out, renumber everything. I will take out the comments that I've made that's sort of in the green typeface at different points, which is really just for our committee use. And we will bring the final version of our legislative program to be presented from the committee to the council on November 21, 2 weeks from today, which is our usual process. It becomes then not a committee document, it becomes a council document. And I wanted to be sure to point that out at this meeting, because on December 5, when our Secretary, Ms. Cook, is working to get all of our legislators to be with us on that day, I will not be present at that meeting. So it will be your baby, Mr. Mayor, to preside over the discussion at that point with the legislators. And I guess we can all just keep our fingers crossed, because with all the work that we've done, with all the help we've gotten to Advantis, a lot of our success in the General Assembly in the 2023 session is going to depend on what happens tomorrow. Because I think that even though we don't have election this year for State Senate and House of Delegates, the direction for much of our country and even for our Commonwealth can be very greatly influenced by the outcome of tomorrow's election. So my fingers are certainly crossed, and I hope that everybody is taking very seriously the obligation to let our voices be heard. So that's December 5. You may lead that discussion, and I'll have to think about whether I might pull that up on Facebook Live and see.
Think about
But I can't make any promises at this point. With that, if there's no other business. we'll
Yeah, I just had a question.
Sure.
I just need to figure out the process, and so, Mr. Cowell, I don't know if Ron, Laura, or Kathy, under the Jobs Act and the infrastructure investment, and I'm sure, Bill, you know where I'm going with this, I'm trying to figure out how it works with the national electric vehicle infrastructure. Who decides that and who makes that decision on where the funding is? Because, Roanoke missed the first round. For the superchargers, they're going to Christiansburg, Fincastle, Natural Bridge, up that I-81 corridor, and here we are, the largest city in Southwest Virginia. So I don't understand how they were chosen. Is that done by our legislators, or is it something that the city has to advocate for? I'm trying to figure out how it works so that I'll know what we need to be doing so that we can make the second round, because clearly we missed the first round, and it's just unreal how that happened.
Yeah, some of those rules are still evolving as they go along, but the items that you mentioned, so all the states were required to submit to the federal government their plan. If they didn't submit a plan, then the localities could individually make application to the federal government. On second or third day before the due date, Virginia did submit its plan. As I understand it, and it certainly can find out more, but that plan is assembled at the level of the governor's office, and I can find out more about the specifics of it. And it is, in most states, what they did is they identified major corridors like I-81, and then there is an objective in the federal legislation as well as in the state guidance as to distance between those charging stations. And they did take into consideration, as I understand it, the presence of charging stations that may already exist along those corridors within a certain distance. But all of those decisions were made at the state level. There was really, other than comments that were allowed for the whole, basically anyone could comment on. There is, as I understand it, some additional funding that's coming forward out of that same program, which will be more competitive. So it will allow communities to compete for those dollars. So, for example, the examples of Fincastle, Christiansburg, those weren't because of any local action. Those were determined by the state.
Right, they were determined by the state, and that was my question. And so, of course, we were overlooked because they are going to be superchargers, which is what we need here.
But there are, as I understand, there are then subsequent follow-up items that we will be able to actually compete for as a locality, as will all localities, not just through the state action with it as well. And that's the piece that we're kind of looking through now. National League of Cities is very involved in this as well, trying to figure out how to help best advise communities on how to proceed with it. But so I don't even think those have been established as a date yet for
No,
those
I don't
pieces.
think so, but I know we don't want to miss the second round. So you're saying, Mr. Cowell, we can do that at the local level, and we don't have to depend on the state because the state made these decisions.
Yeah, that's my understanding, that there is, behind this, there's another program that will allow localities to actually compete for those dollars.
Okay, and so we can do that on our own. We don't have to depend on the legislators.
Correct. And actually, we'll be able to use the state plan now as justification because, they've already got a plan in place that talks about where those superchargers are going to go along the interstate. Now, we can step into that and talk about how you build out the rest of the network. So that'll be part of that
well, that's good. I
conversation.
just wanted to be proactive because I don't want us to miss the boat again on that because we got to make sure that we're prepared, our infrastructure is ready for all the EVs that are going to be out there circulating. Thank you.
Sure.
So perhaps we can get a little bit more details behind that at a future council meeting or just in a
Absolutely,
report
and
to
I
us?
would actually say that, as you all know, between the Infrastructure Act as well as the Jobs Act and other things that have been approved at the federal level, there's a lot of funding that is kind of evolving in what they're going to do. And I think it would be worth having, once those settle out a little bit, a briefing to come back and talk about all those different programs and what we're potentially eligible for, and in other instances, what the state will be eligible for. So we certainly can do that as well.
And as part of that, perhaps we can find out exactly where these stations are expected to be. I mean, when we say Fincastle, it's hard for me to think that people are going to have to get off 81 and drive all the way into the middle of the town of Fincastle. It's a Fincastle address, or a Christiansburg address, but it's
And
most likely.
The state plan shows that information, so I certainly can get you all a copy of that state
so we can
plan
get
as
that,
well.
and that's right along, I mean, for better or worse, I guess, Interstate 81 doesn't quite come through the city of Roanoke.
It does not, but.
No, I understand what you're saying, and I'm not disagreeing with any of that. I'm just saying that I think what they've tried to do up to this point is to pick locations as close to the interstates as possible so that people.
Castle?
What I'm saying is, if you heard what I said earlier, which I think you were talking to the mayor instead, but Fincastle address, but I don't think that means in the middle of the town of Fincastle. It means somewhere right off of 81 that has a Fincastle address, but it's not all the way up in Fincastle.
Yeah.
So we'll find that out. We'll find out.
Yeah, that's great. Just, if we could just stay on top of it, I appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah, we will. Then if there's nothing further?
Well, let me say, I'm sure I speak for the council's best wishes. Thank you for your service as we move forward. And I'll anxiously be looking at the election tomorrow and see where we go as we prepare to go forward. So thank you for everything that you've done, the work, and this can be tedious work. And to follow up on it, I just want to commend you and appreciate you, and I hope you enjoy the 55 days you have now.
55 days, Mayor. 55 days.
55 days.
From my understanding, Mayor, he said he would come back as a consultant. Is that what you said?
If you can afford me.
Okay. Now, you didn't say that part. You just said you'd come back as a
I thought
consultant.
that was understood.
Oh, okay.
That's the way of the world these days. It's the way of the world.
Money, money, money.
Thank you, Bill, and thank everybody out there. Good to see you, Ron, as always, and the whole staff up there. We really appreciate your presence and your working with us. All right, thank you.
If there's nothing further, the committee meeting is adjourned, and I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right. The meeting is adjourned, and the council meeting now will stand in recess for a closed meeting, and thereafter we'll reconvene at 2 p.m. here in the council chamber for our next session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.